Well, part of it's in the books. Part of it is coming. We're entering phase 2, and there's a lot to get updated on out at Chiefs camp as we get ready. Matt Derrick was there from ChiefsDigest.com. He is here now and going to tell you all about it today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Everyone, I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting. You can find me at rogueapc.com as well as NFL33.com. It's my new draft and team building oriented site. Check that out. Today, thanks for making us your first listen, because here on the Locked On Podcast Network, we're free every day, everywhere for everyone. Check out everything YouTube, like, sub, hit the bell. Audio subscriptions, get those. Chiefs Digest, go subscribe to that. Oh, wait, you don't subscribe to that. You just go read it, because that's the easiest way to get the information, because Matt Derrick is here from Chiefs Digest. How are you, Matt?
Dealing with record heat.
Oof.
It's May and it's 90 degrees, and I'm thankful that we got rookie minicamp done before it hit 90, but now I'm like, it's going to be 90 during OTAs here in a couple of weeks. And
yeah, it's going to be a rough spring.
That's not going to be fun.
and at least it allows the newcomers to get used to the environs there. In Missouri, it's not that pretty in the summer. You got to admit it. It's going to be difficult. And I think some of these guys are going to have some transitions to make. A lot of transitioning going on. A lot of questions going on about all the new players. There was a slew of them. Bit of news. We had one signing, right, from the invitees to rookie camp. It was Glaser, the guard, right?
Yeah, Chris Glaser from Virginia looked pretty good. I mean, he stood out to me. I mean, what you can stand out is amongst the guys in the trenches during a non-contact, no pad OTA. But he definitely looked the part. So, and that's what I'm looking for. I mean, looking for a guy who can line up and knows where he's going and looks like an NFL player, and he certainly did that. So he was one of the signees. They brought back Austin Ryder and Gary Jennings, who were two guys that they let go. Just to sign the undrafted free agents. So they pass out a couple of those guys, so the old veterans come back.
Okay, as we expect. And everyone's going to differentiate between the draft selections and the UDFA class, which, according to several sources around the league, this is, if not the best, one of the top 3 UDFA classes in all of the league. That stands to reason from what I've seen as well. There's lots of guys that I like in that group. But just as a rookie class, on their first exposure to practicing for Andy Reid, what were your takeaways? What stood out to you?
I mean, I think the first overall arching theme was just that the rookies in the draft class looked the part. There were varying levels of participation. I mean, Sky Moore went through individual drills, but that was about it. He didn't take any participation in any of the team periods. And that was to be expected. He had a hamstring injury, that came up during draft prep. So it wasn't anything that happened in Kansas City. It was a pre-existing injury. Chiefs knew all about it. So they wanted to take it easy on him. He was clearly doing some things, which is a good sign. I mean, if that hamstring was any concern, they would have shut him down completely. But wanted to make sure he was out there so he got the experience of just going through, because this 3A minicamp for the rookie class is just getting ready for when the veterans show up. You need to find out, what's expected of you in the meeting rooms, how do you get to the practice field, what you do when you're on the practice field, how to figure out what the play call is, how to line up. I mean, all these things, you get them out of your way during the rookie minicamp so that you're ready next week when the veterans show up. And like I said, I mean, the guys that they drafted, there wasn't anyone that I said this weekend why they draft him. Sometimes there's even an undrafted free agent that'll pop up and you'll say, wait a minute, why didn't they draft this guy? Why didn't they sign this guy instead of somebody that they did draft? Wasn't the case with any of these guys. They all looked the part. They all look like they belong. And the guys that, had chances to participate in a full go, I mean, George Karlaftis pretty much dominated that minicamp. I mean, he was arguably the best player on the field every single day. McDuffie looked good. Jalen Watson looked good. Najee Johnson looked good. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco had a little bit of a light workload on Saturday, but seemed like he was a full go the rest of the time. Brian Cook is another one who came in with this camp with the shoulder injury that once again was a pre-existing injury Chiefs knew about. He didn't participate in any team drills either, but the one thing he did on Saturday that really stood out was that He was standing back on the goal line behind the defense for that entire 2-hour and 45-minute practice, doing those mental reps that coaches talk about, and what we saw Juan Thornhill doing when he was coming back from an injury. So the fact that a young guy like that is doing that kind of thing in his very first NFL practice in a rookie minicamp tells me a lot about the player.
Right. He is my sleeper to be the guy that has the most immediate impact, because they need him, because they want to run dime. They have to get him up to speed. And I saw several spots where he's spending time with Steve Spagnuolo. And if you are a second-round draft pick that they don't have plans for, the defense coordinator is not standing there whispering in your ear about what this means and how you're going to do this when you're on the field. So I took that as a very positive sign for him.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, you and I are probably the two biggest guys on Brian Cook and Chiefs Kingdom land. I was really impressed with the film. I think he was a good get for the Chiefs. And like I said, even though he was limited in what he could do during this mini camp, the mental preparation that he was doing. And once again, the fact that these guys all looked like they belonged. They didn't look lost and confused. That's a big part of it. I mean, that's a big part of being able to make sure that once this game gets going real, that you're not in some sort of remedial program, or you fall behind on day one and you stay behind. These guys look like that they are ready to do what they're being asked to do on day one.
I love that. And I think that sets them up for what happens next week. We're going to talk about some specific players that maybe aren't in the top 5 selections here. We didn't even talk about all the top 5 selections in this draft, but we'll get to that here in a second after we tell you about our pals. It's that time of the year. You might not be done with your New Year's resolution, but you got to keep fighting for it. Whether you're trying to get fitter or you're just trying to live a cleaner life, Built Bar can help you. These are the bars that you want to get. They're the best tasting protein bars out there. They're incredible. And it doesn't matter if you like the cinnamony churro, the coconut marshmallow, the straight coconut brownie chunk that I love, as well as the toffee almond. They're all there. They're all delicious. And they give you what you need to try to stay fit and support yourself in your goals for this new year. They're low calorie, high protein, and low in everything that you don't need. You can go over there. They're generally about 130 to 150 calories. They have 4 grams of net sugars. They have 4 net carbs. They have 17 on average grams of protein per bar. You can compare them to like a candy bar. It's like 240 calories. And that's what you get, the difference in using Built Bars. Mint Brownies, popular flavor right now. They have a bunch of the new puffs that are the marshmallow protein. Our offer, as always, is at Built.com. It's the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off of your order. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. So, Matt, obviously, Karlaftis, a lot of energy. Like you said, dominated that particular practice. That's great. I do want to talk a little bit in a minute about the guy that he practiced against quite a bit. But for me, general impressions coming away from the weekend from what I got to see, granted, I wasn't on the practice field with you, McDuffie certainly feels to me like they got a steal. The NFL made a mistake letting him fall this far because he came in prepared. He seems to understand what he has to focus on and what he's not. He came across to me, especially in some of the comments that he made, that he's well advanced of an average rookie.
Yeah, the things that he talked about with us, I think absolutely fit into that category. And another sign is what the Chiefs are asking him to do even at a rookie minicamp. Because, one of the things Andy Reid talked about, on Monday was the fact that with these rookies, they try to let them do what they did in college so that they're comfortable. Maybe their role will change down the road, but right now they want them to do what they did in college. And so for a lot of guys, that means, you're maybe just in a one specific situation or a niche or anything like that. Well, Trent McDuffie was lined up all over the field. He was inside, he was outside, he was in the slot. I mean, he was all over the place. And that wasn't the case with most of the other defensive backs and other cornerbacks. I mean, they were definitely letting him do what he did in college, which once again is line up anywhere. And the fact that he was doing that and you don't see him coming into a spot and then like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be on the other side of the defense. You didn't see those things. It looked like he's picking things up quickly. And definitely from talking to him and hearing from Reid and some of the other people with the team, yeah, he's a guy who gets it early, who understands it, who's going to be able to pick up this defense, and you're not going to be having to spoon feed him. I think he's going to take this up and be able to play on the go.
And this is exactly what we saw happen with L'Jarius Sneed a couple seasons ago, when he was a rookie. It was obviously a much more value pick taking him in the 4th, but that's what it was. Is we didn't have expectations for L'Jarius because we didn't see that before. But as he picked it up and as they fed him more, he didn't have any issues with it. So I think that bodes very well for McDuffie getting in early. And honestly, I can see in a season or two, the two of them being the prime candidates in the secondary for this team. The question to me was, did you feel, just as an initial glance, did you like McDuffie better outside or inside?
That's a tough one. That's a tough call. And honestly, he was effective in both spots. I mean, sometimes defensive backs in a camp like this, they get some opportunities because, they're getting tested, anything like that. The two quarterbacks in this rookie mini camp, I think they figured out on day one, don't throw the ball at Trent McDuffie. So he didn't get a lot of opportunities to break up any passes or make any interceptions or anything like that because they were wisely not throwing in his direction. But also, I mean, whether he was inside or outside, his guy wasn't open. So, yeah, I mean, he
sounds like the bulk of his career at UW.
He really the only time that his name really came up at any point was there was on day 3 in the red zone period, there was a throw towards the end zone and I believe it was Justin Ross that he was on, who's a big cat. Mm-hmm. And it looked like Ross may have actually caught the ball. It was tough. It was whether it was close about whether he actually held onto the football when he went to the ground or if his feet were even inbound, because we're on the other side of the field. So we're like 140 yards away from the action. But even though McDuffie was draped on him, Ross was able to get his hands on the football. And of course, the comment on the sidelines from the media was like, well, that's the short arms getting to you. But no, I mean, that was probably the only time I saw him even give up anything. And once again, I mean, I don't think he gave it up because I don't think it was a catch.
There you go. And at the end of the day, you got to use everything you can. He's had a slight disadvantage, but I don't think it's as drastic as a lot of people think. The movement skills, I think, are there, and I'm looking forward to seeing it in person myself. Obviously, the second rounders, both injured, didn't see much from them. Chanel was out there. From what I saw, a couple of man reps early just to see what he's got. Did you have an impression of how he moved when he wasn't going downhill?
Well, I was getting ready to say that when he was going downhill, there was a lot to like. Oh, he was clearly the most comfortable with that. And the Chiefs, put him at Mike most of the time because that's what they're preparing him to be. They want him to be Nick Bolton's backup this year and most likely be the starter at Sam. But they wanted him to get as many opportunities in that middle linebacker position right now when there's nobody else to give those snaps to. So he spent a lot of time there. You're right. I mean, once again, downhill is his game. Coverage is going to be a little bit more iffy and everything. And it's tough. I mean, the coverage didn't look tight. That didn't necessarily mean that the passing game was always effective because the quarterback group and the receivers were not always on the same page. The wind was blowing about 20 miles an hour most of camp. Which really stunk for the quarterbacks. But yeah, I mean, at this point in his career, Chanel's a much better player downhill than he is dropping back.
Yeah. And that's to be expected. That's his evaluation. That's what he is. He can change that in the future, folks. Now, for me, the UDFA that I see the best future for is Mike Rose, because I feel like he is the puzzle piece that fits in with Chanel perfectly in that he belongs in space. He belongs in coverage. I don't know that I want him going downhill, but what did you see from Rose himself?
Yeah, I mean, Rose, I mean, honestly, I mean, he feels like a lot like Ben Neiman, and that's not a knock because I think he's faster than Ben Neiman, and he's a little bit quicker in some places. Ben Neiman did a ton with maybe not the greatest athleticism in the world, but because he was a strong kid and a high football IQ. Mike Rose, probably has all those things too, except I think he's got more athleticism and certainly he has got that chip on his shoulder because this is another guy that is definitely taking the fact that he thought he was going to get drafted and the fact that he didn't get his name called. That's motivating him. And so there's that big old chip on his shoulder. And he definitely looked good. I mean, once again, I mean, he's a little more well-rounded. You're right. There's a lot of things that he can do. There's things that he's not going to be able to do as well as Chanel for sure. and he's not going to be able to do as well as Nick Bolton and Willie Gay. But as far as being that kind of versatile guy who can do a little bit of everything, yeah, he looked at in special teams. It's easy to see Mike Rose being born to play special teams.
Yeah, I have him with the best shot to make the roster of all the UDFAs, and that is specifically before that. And folks, don't get nervous. Schnell being the backup Mike is not a position change. It's just that in today's NFL, and specifically for the Kansas City Chiefs, the Sam is a sub-package player. The Sam isn't out there the majority of it. You're in nickel and dime so much. He is the guy that gets less reps, and that's perfectly fine. I think having a better backup that can do more of what Bolton does when Bolton can't be on the field, I think that's great. I'm looking forward to that. The question becomes then, what do you do with the rest of the guys? I found it very intriguing that both the drafted corners, and Josh Williams, maybe it is Joshua, you'll have to tell me, as well as Jalen Watson, they both seem to echo each other in ways, in both saying that, I'm learning a lot already. And I take that actually as you aren't quite ready for this. If you're learning things on day one, you're not just going with the flow with what you did in college. How did they look? And do you agree that's a longer shot for those guys, or are they at any deficit at this point?
Yeah, I mean, and both of those guys, remember, I mean, especially like Joshua Williams is coming from a D2 school. So the leap there is going to be huge. He got some all-star game experience too. So that's a good, at least introduction and everything. But there's absolutely going to be things for him to learn just from even a practice standpoint, because what you do at the D2 level is not the same as Division I. So there's going to be some things that are a little overwhelming to him, but at the same time, I mean, he seems like he is picking it up. And the fact that, he was able to be out there, and like I said, I thought moved around pretty well and didn't look lost or confused or anything like that. That's a good sign for him. And Watson's a bit of the same way too, because remember, he kicked around a little bit. I mean, he moved around and got some, that wasn't in one place for very long to really learn anything. And some of his experience was at a lower level. So, he's a confident kid though, but I think that, the couple of things that really stood out just about his personality and his character though, is that, you get a sense of a work ethic that's in him, because maybe he has had some struggles. So he's willing to work at it, and he kind of knows what he doesn't know. And that's a thing that a lot of players don't get, but I got that from him. And the fact that he has a little blend of confidence and, self-deprecation at the same time. There's a little bit there that I think's a good mix for where the spot that he's in. And the fact that you're right. I mean, his is going to be the first time that he's going to be in one place for a while, and he's got to, kind of settle down and make a home here.
I think that he will. And folks, I know what you're screaming about. Yes, Patrick Mahomes still runs this team. We are going to talk about the offense. That's coming up next. Now, Matt, you mentioned it earlier. Talk of the town, and we've discussed it here on the show, Chris and I, is Ross, and the fact that he's got such a storied past with all the injuries, but walks into rookie camp and clearly shows what he's capable of, even not 100%, with the injuries still outstanding, with some career-threatening injuries in his past already. But I thought he moved well from the little bit that I saw. How did you take what he looked like against the rest of these rookies?
Yeah, I thought he absolutely moved well. Didn't think that was an as serious an issue or anything like that. I didn't even see some of the hesitation that maybe I even saw in some of his film from last year, where, maybe it looked like he was shying away from hits a little bit and moving away from some guys. You saw him, he was getting open. I mean, he was getting separation. Those are obviously good things, even if you're not, making contact and there's no pads in a situation like this. Hard to tell why the ball wasn't necessarily coming his way. If certainly, hey, even in a practice like this, you got to go through your read progression, and maybe it was just a matter that he wasn't the target. But I saw some balls going some places that like maybe it should have gone to him, and not quite sure. So maybe it was simply on the play calling and the quarterbacks and all of those things. But I think it also speaks to a little bit of, compared to the draft picks, he showed a little bit more confusion. He showed a little bit, more of the. You can see why he's a project a bit, because, you look at his last couple of years, and between the injury and between COVID, his time on the field since 2019 has been pretty limited. And, and there's probably even a case to be made that a lot of what he was doing in that Clemson offense, in the first couple of years was a lot of just pure athleticism. Maybe there were just simply times that they were just letting him and his guy quarterback just kind of go out there and play some backyard ball at times. And if that's the case, I mean, there's absolutely no reason to believe with Justin Ross, with the enormous talent that he has, that there's not a role there. But I would say after this weekend, dial back the expectations. Don't be thinking that Justin Ross is going to come in and be the number one receiver on this team and have like 1,000-yard season. For one, that rookies don't do that in Andy Reid's offense. And if a rookie is going to do that, it's going to be Sky Moore. He's the one that's going to get the opportunities. What can Justin Ross be? He is there this year more than anything to learn. You're making an investment in Justin Ross that it's going to be down the road that he's making big time contributions. The athleticism is absolutely there, but I think it was pretty clear at this weekend. He's got some things to learn. It's going to take him a little bit more time maybe to pick up the offense than maybe some other guys, because he just doesn't have the recent experience in doing it. So no reason to be scared. Did he have a quiet weekend? Sure. And maybe that was all by design. I mean, maybe that was simply the Chiefs not wanting to put too much on his plate yet and wanting to just kind of manage his workload and everything, and even maybe manage his own expectations. Let's see what happens down the road. But like I said, I mean, to me, if Justin Ross is the sixth receiver on this team and has 200 yards receiving, I think that's a win. And if for no other reason, because you're investing for Justin Ross is not for 2022, you're investing in him down the road. And that's where the payoff would be.
Exactly. I think it's really tricky with him, though, because of the name, because of his success as a freshman. I think it's going to be difficult to get him on a practice squad. I have Gordon, and Fountain fighting for 5 and 6. And it may come down to, if you try to sneak him on the practice squad, you might be unsuccessful. And so I can see that being a discussion that we have here in late July and see what happens. So that's a start. One guy that I'm really intrigued by, and we can talk about Pacheco as well at this position, but Jerrion Ealy is a guy that I liked on film. I thought he was draftable. I'm a little surprised that he went undrafted, but of the two, did you get a spark out of anybody here in just what is a limited look at this offense?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see what the Chiefs are going to do with him, because it was curious that they listed him as a running back and a wide receiver on the rookie minicamp roster. And Andy Reid pointed out they only used him as a running back. They didn't line him out as a wide receiver. Doesn't mean that, once we get to OTAs that you might not see him doing some of that. I mean, we've seen him do it with rookies in different positions and kind of split them around. I mean, Jody Fortson was one of those guys who early in his career split time between the running back wide receiver and the tight end room. Maybe this is a guy that's going to do a little bit of that, but he played entirely running back. And with the caveat that a lot of times you saw him running back and lining up in maybe some more like H-back type roles, or, just in some different spots. But I mean, as Chiefs fans, you see him, and if you go to training camp, you're probably going to immediately think this guy's Jerick McKinnon, and I think that's a great comparison.
That's okay.
And I think that's probably one of the reasons why the Chiefs liked him, because they were like, you know what, we really like Jerick McKinnon, and this guy looks like Jerick McKinnon except 8 years younger.
Done.
Done exactly. So really interested. I mean, yeah, I do think he's an intriguing piece. It will be interesting to see if they do, maybe try and test him at receiver a little bit, and check out that role. But no, I mean, he definitely flashed during this camp. I mean, you can see the speed and the quickness. I mean, he's got that acceleration at his size. He can make guys miss. No, he's a really intriguing piece to watch.
Now, in contrast, Pacheco has the speed as well, but he's more of a straight line downhill guy from what I saw on film. Did he look like that out to you as well?
Yeah, he did. I think he showed maybe a little bit better hands than I was expecting. And then definitely as a route runner, I think he was a little bit more polished. I saw that, one of the quarterbacks took a shot on him. It was not successful, but they took a shot on him on a wheel route downfield. But he was in the ballpark with it, and the route looked really, good and crispy. I mean, he was open, so I mean, that was a good sign in and of itself. So yeah, I think he's got some potential. I mean, I think that there's definitely he can maybe do some things that maybe you're not expecting that he can do. But you're right. I mean, he's not going to be a make guys miss. I mean, he's a downhill runner, and he prefers to run through people and around them. And that's kind of running back we saw. That even without pads, I mean, he still looked like he wanted to run over people and run around him.
Yeah, he seems to like focus on the chest plate of the defender and go get it rather than avoiding it. So that's okay. It's going to be what it is. It's probably a guy that I'm going to like with Mike Burton in the backfield quite a bit. We'll get to that here in the future, folks. Lastly, the guy that I really want to know about is because I think he has the best opportunity to get time early on offense. How did Kennard look specifically against Karlaftis? And do you think that I'm right that he is a viable option to fight Andrew Wiley for this right tackle spot while Niang is hurt?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, you looked at it, and once again, he looked the part. The size really stands out. I mean, he's a bigger guy than I think that people probably think of him being. I mean, but he's definitely looks like a tackle. He had some good matches with Kennard, or excuse me, he got with Karlaftis. He held his own. I mean, Karlaftis still got the better of him, but once again, I mean, this is you can't get your hands in there and kind of steer guys a little bit. You can't do the things you can do when you're in pads. So with Kennard, let's wait until then. I mean, with all these guys, let's see what happens when the pads come on. But no, I definitely want to see what happens, because he showed enough this weekend to show that the footwork is there, the hands are there. He's got all the pieces, and once again, looked comfortable. I didn't see him, getting out of alignment. Didn't see him making, any mistakes, going one way where the play is going another. He looked like he was getting it all down. Reed talked about the fact that this is a strong, smart kid. So yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely in that conversation. Let's see where he lines up when they get to OTAs and what kind of his role is. But I think he can compete for that right tackle spot.
I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you for giving us your bird's eye view since you were there. Folks, ChiefsDigest.com is where you want to go for all of Matt's work. Thank you for the time again, Matt.
As always, Ryan, great talking to you. Take care, everybody.
Folks, you all have a great one. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Talk to you then.